This is the Living Well group. I'm Paul Kervick. And with me today are Mougey and Tasha Stouffer. And we're here to share with you about aging in community, and specifically about what we do at Living Well Group. We started this adventure, it has been, about 14 years ago in Bristol, Vermont. And we really were looking at how to innovate around aging. And our mission, being a nonprofit, is to really help create vital aging in community. Our mission is kind of big, and I'd like to start by sharing that with you. It's to create a model of whole person care, elder care, that honors, respects, and elevates each individual while redefining aging in America. Yeah, that's a pretty big mission. And when we started out, this came from an awareness, I guess, we had when I was in grad school. I was very interested in social systems and looking as a culture how we provide services around birthing, aging, finances, education. And most all of our systems here in the West were based on control. And what I know to be true, and I think any of us that live in Vermont in this beautiful environment, we get to see nature operating all the time. Everything is connected. Our body, mind, emotion, and spirit is connected. If our communities are connected, they're vital. And so when we looked at aging, it was kind of like birth. Birth is the first entry into this world. And in the West, we were treating birth as an illness. You go to the hospital, have your baby. Insurance would pay about $2,700 back in the early 1970s. We started the first alternative birthing center to basically, because birth is not an illness, it's a normal part of life. And around the world, it's treated with midwives. It's a healthy, normal experience, and you can screen out where the risks are. Fast forward to today in Vermont and looking at aging as a community topic, aging is seen as an illness, and there's a lot of fear around it, and there's a lot of misinformation around it. And part of what we wanted to do was to take a different approach to aging. And we started this little residential care 13-bed facility in Bristol. And our focus was going to be the value of an elder. Our elders are one of the greatest untapped resources this country has. So often, they're sitting alone in a house or maybe in a facility somewhere, watching their television in their little room. For me and for our team, that wasn't okay. I'm a baby boomer, and I like to be engaged in life and living. And so when we started Living Well, we looked at how could we do this differently and focus on the value of elders, focus on health, not illness. And I don't care what your mental or physical challenges are in your life, you have value to your community. And often that's being lost here in the West in our approach to aging as an illness. And so we started in Bristol. We were able to expand and acquire the Ethan Allen residence here in Burlington. And of course, our Burlington community would have the most interest probably in that. And we did that about 5 years ago. And then our third location, which I'll just mention in passing, is actually down in Washington County in the state capital of Montpelier. And that's the Heaton Woods residence that we acquired a couple years ago. Our approach is body, mind, emotion, and spirit, the value of our elders, and how we can have a home-like, beautiful situation when people are not able to be at home alone anymore, and have that available in our local community to serve our local community. So I'd like to introduce now two very key people of our Living Well group team. Mougey, if you'd like to introduce yourself. She is our administrator at Ethan Allen. And then we'll go to Tasha Stouffer, who is our director of programs and activities. And they both are involved with the whole organization, but specifically Ethan Allen residents is where they can speak directly. Mary.
Thank you, Paul. So I've been at Ethan Allen residence, as you know, for 5 years. I live in the neighborhood. I live about half a mile from Ethan Allen. I started out in social work years ago, and then left social work and did sales for a few years. Allowed me flexibility when I was raising my family, but decided I needed some food for my soul, so I needed to return back to social work. I started volunteering at Ethan Allen and connected with it, believed the mission aligned strongly with my beliefs and the way that we treat elders. And then fast forward 5 years, I've been the administrator for 2 years and have enjoyed every minute of it. Again, it's part of the community I live in. Many of our residents lived in the old new North End. Their kids live in the new North End. So I feel very fortunate that I can work and live in this great community.
Mary, why don't you tell us, like, where is Ethan Allen Residence and how people know where it is or how to find it?
So the address itself is 1200 North Avenue. It's the old Christian Alliance Church.
Oh, sure.
Yep. We have 40 residents. It's a smaller residence with a very home-like setting. So.
And you're right in the middle of a neighborhood.
We're right in the middle of a neighborhood. Actually, we're on a street with many homes. And we have beautiful gardens. And what's very important to me is that it's a home, and we work in these people's homes at home. So it's very warm, home-like environment.
Yeah. I know people have spoken to me over time and are surprised when they walk into that building. It feels like they're coming into someone's home.
And
Tell
it
us
is their
about
home.
the staff and the residents and the family and how that all works.
And it is their home, and it's really important that we all remember, the staff remembers that this is their home. We have 40 residents. They range in age from 56 to 99.
Wow.
They range in physical and cognitive ability from someone who takes the bus downtown to someone who's in the later stages of dementia. They live in community. People are not, based on their level of function, they're not, in one wing or another. Everyone lives with each other, and it works very, very well.
You know, this reminds me of part of that initial impulse I talked about is looking at life is, instead of controlling things, that really our job is managing change.
Yep.
Every cell in our body is changing all the time. And as we go through life from birth to teenhood to married or divorced or, later in life as we're getting ready to pass to spirit, it's all just change. And we should, in our mind, be focused on supporting people to, as with grace and love and health, be as vital in that change in their lives, no matter where they are on that spectrum. And that rather than isolating folks that may have some issues, which is kind of the trend a lot, is to kind of separate off. I notice when kids come in that sometimes there's fear around someone with dementia or Alzheimer's. And I love that what we do is create a family environment. And I think, Tasha, you could even speak a little bit to that, and then we'll get back to you. But I wanted to introduce Tasha. Tell us a little bit about your background and your connection to Burlington and Ethan Allen, because you've got a special connection to the dementia Alzheimer's.
So I have been in dementia care as a caregiver. I was a caregiver for 11 years before I came to Ethan Allen Residence. I worked both as private duty and did agency work, and had the I had the opportunity to see pretty much every residence in Chittenden County. So Mary was the social worker at the time at Ethan Allen and actually asked me to spend some time with an incoming resident. I had known her for years and years. She knew I did caregiving and said, hey, this woman wants to move in. It's going to be about a month until her room is ready. How do you feel about working with her? And I said, great, the timing worked out well. And that was how I first got to know Ethan Allen Residence, because the family asked me to stay on and help the mother adjust to living in community. So we did, I did that and fell in love with Ethan Allen Residence right away, because it felt like a home. It didn't feel institutional. And that is what most people say when they walk in the door.
Yeah, that's really a key point. You know, when you look back at the history of how we approach aging in this country, it's based on this model of the nursing home, which is something that happened after the war. And as our soldiers came back, they needed care. And so they built these like rectangular wards like in a hospital, and you'd have the rooms there and a nursing station on one end. And that's kind of the same approach we've taken.
Right.
And this isn't rocket science, but it's something that makes common sense to us. I've been blessed over the years to be able to travel to India and Africa and Egypt and different countries. And when you see how they treat elders there in your 50s and 60s, it's a time of no stress. It's a time when you give your gift back to the community. And that, I know, is such an important part of what you're doing daily there with working in these residents. What gifts do they have? How can you access that? And how can they share that in community? You want to say a little bit?
Sure. So there's a couple of things. Honoring people where they're at and when they're coming in. They can be, as Mary had said, at many different levels, whether they have cognitive challenges or physical challenges. We really do everything in our power to meet them exactly where they're at. And my job as the Director of Resident Programs is to bring joy. So because we're small, we can really personalize that.
Yeah.
And we also really engage the community because we live in such a great community. We can really bring in the moms with the strollers on walking programs, and people come with
dogs in there.
We had 2 dogs today. It was actually it was a great day for dogs at the residence, and a lot of joy all around.
You know, it reminds me of a story. We had a resident early on in Bristol many years ago that would sit in her room watching TV, like you go through a lot of places. That kind of is what happens. And we had activities and things, but she was kind of quiet. We didn't know a lot about her. And one day someone donated a piano, one of these little, and she came down and sat down and started playing like a concert pianist. And as we did that, we would work with essential oils in the house. We had music playing. We try to encourage people to get out of their rooms and be engaged in living. Versus, I mean, the room is great when you need some space or you sleep at night, but think about this as a family. We grew up, probably most of us in Burlington, with brothers and sisters and shared a room or shared a house. Why should you stop living and stop that family-like home environment just because you may have some issues?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because people don't stay in their rooms at Ethan Allen Residence. It is everyone's out and about, and those who aren't engaged are watching the people that are or hanging out in the public spaces, really just trying to see what's going on and give us constant commentary and that kind of thing. So
rarely do you see a resident's room, the door closed to their room.
Right.
The doors are usually open and the rooms are usually vacant.
Right.
People want to see what's going on. There's music playing throughout the whole building all the time.
You know, that's another fascinating thing because I think typically in the industry, you know, people, again, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of looking at everything as an illness. Oh, you have dementia. Oh, you have Alzheimer's. So we need to somehow separate that because people will be afraid of it or we don't know how to. What we have found is that we've actually had better results in terms of the length of time people are living, and that some of these folks, when they actually have a roommate, they do better.
Absolutely.
There's a sense of community. There's a sense of comradeship. People start caring for each other. Again, we're creating family environments for these people.
You know, also sharing a room, we see that it lowers anxiety. So as one starts to maybe lose their memory a little, they become anxious. But to have someone there in the room with them settles them.
And I think we have a combination. We do have some private rooms, and again, everybody's different. And what we try to do is identify with the residents and their families. And that's another really big point I think it's important to talk about are the families. Because without the families and without our people in the Burlington community engaged in this living system, this living well, we wouldn't be as successful. So do you want to share a little bit about how we approach and work with the families and engage them in what's happening at Living Well?
So I will say that the family involvement has a direct correlation with the happiness of the resident and how we all function as a team, because we really are a team and we all have to be on the same page. And the more that a family is involved and is visiting and participating in activities, the more success the relationship has. And we have been really fortunate to build a tight community of families and volunteers.
And also, I think what's important too here is part of this very diverse Burlington community You know, that's a big issue in Burlington, is the inclusion. And we are blessed to have a lot of folks from different countries that have resettled here in Burlington. I'd like to say a little bit about the work and the commitment you all have made at Ethan Allen in terms of engaging in that.
Mm-hmm. You know what, Paul, can I take a step back?
Oh,
because
please.
I want to
Yeah.
educate our listeners to the difference to a level 3 versus a level 2,
Oh,
because
great.
this is often
Yep.
so new to people.
Yes.
And so we are a residential care home, which is a level 3.
And you're licensed by the state?
Yes.
Yep.
So a level 2 is a nursing home, a skilled nursing home.
Okay.
So we're level 3 residential care. We have a nurse on staff 7 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day, always a nurse on call. We have a med tech who dispenses medication. We have housekeeping services, we have laundry, and we have caregivers that are around the clock, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And it's their responsibility to, or they assist people with bathing, dressing, getting someone to the dining room, whatever one's needs are. And we do all this, again, in a home-like environment versus a medical model, you know. And over the years, we've seen, you know, level 3 years ago, people had cars there. They
Yeah.
were very independent. The acuity has changed tremendously over the years. People, recently actually, people are staying home longer. So by the time they come to Ethan Allen, their needs are pretty great, you know, and we're able to meet that, though, and keep them in this great environment.
And that's so important. It brings up another point that I think I've been asked by families. You know, I've got my mom living at home, or my dad, and he's forgetting things. We found the stove on the other night.
Right.
You know, we're not sure what to do. You know, we have to work. There's a lot of fear around that. How do you work with, what would you suggest to families? I mean, I know about beginning the conversation, or maybe coming for a visit, you know, developing a connection. Say how we work
You know,
with that.
people are usually, this is all new to most people. It's hard, it's difficult,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about it. But I think that they are pleasantly surprised when they arrive at Ethan Allen to find that, again, it's that home environment, that people are engaged, people are happy, and I'm able to tell families, new families, that our residents settle in very quickly.
Yeah, it's an easier adjustment than
They do.
Yeah.
And I've been there 5 years, and we've never had a resident leave because they weren't happy or it didn't work.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So yes, it is scary, but again, I think it's they're pleasantly surprised.
Well, again, for our listening audience tonight, you know, part of our mission is reaching out. And, you know, there have been studies done all around the world about it's not even so much loneliness that's a factor in longevity and health in an elder's life. It's the lack of social interaction. And so while they may be safe at home in getting a meal check and having their meds delivered or whatever, they're still isolated.
Yep.
And so part of our mission is reaching out. And if there were people in the Burlington area that might have a mom or a dad or a grandfather or someone that is having some difficulty, I mean, you'd be open to maybe having them just come for a visit and have a
Absolutely.
conversation.
Come for lunch, join in
Start
an
a
activity.
gentle, there's no
Absolutely.
decisions have to be made, but just to get to know. And we find building connections in our neighborhood, it's easier because it also helps the elders that are living with us who are looking to feel part of the community. So if we can have some folks coming in taking a Tai Chi class or sharing a meal, it's a way we can build community.
Right, and this is, you know, this is not a negative thing.
Yeah.
Can be a very positive thing, that they can get their family members engaged, they have great food, they're cared for. I understand it's scary, but it can be very positive.
Yeah.
And we have seen people change. We have seen people come up in cognition, at being isolated at home,
Yep.
feeling sick at home, being depressed at home. Depression can have all kinds of symptoms
Oh, yeah.
that look like illness. We see people move into community, all of a sudden they're participating again. People say, my mother will never take an art class. And next thing you know, their artwork's hanging everywhere. So there's a lot of pride and purpose.
Mary, I remember a story, maybe you could share it with the audience, about a woman who'd come in who was kind of not quite all together there, and I think she was on 26 prescription pharmaceuticals, And one of the things we try to do is make available alternative approaches if families and the residents choose to reduce medications. And when they're eating our locally grown organic food, I'll tell you, food is medicine. That makes a huge difference. But I think, what was the story? She eliminated half where she was on, and then all of a sudden the family called? They got their mom back? Or
Right. Well, you often see that a lot of these residents come in, and they do come in on a lot of drugs. They're on a lot of drugs. And our goal is really to try to minimize the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
And that is our goal, and we have been successful. And we continue to look at residents and try to pull them off as many pharmaceuticals as possible, always working with physicians and always working with
Of course,
family.
we work with the system.
So, yeah, we see a lot of benefits, actually.
Well, I mean, the hospitals now use acupuncture, and that wasn't doing that 20 years ago. Mindfulness, meditation, Tai Chi, movement. Music. Oh my God. Tell us about the music.
So we have a woman who was sitting in the lobby the other day, and we were struggling. The nurses were trying to make sure she had everything available that she could have. She was in some pain. And I went over to her and I said, "What is your absolute favorite music?" And she said, "Opera. Any opera at all would be fabulous." So we were able to just choose to listen to opera as a community that day. We put the opera music on, and within moments, her eyes were shut, and the creases in her forehead were gone. She was relaxed, and that was all about the music. So we are using music a lot for anxiety, depression,
There's lots of
and even
research
pain.
supporting that. Absolutely. There's so much we can do with this opioid crisis.
Right.
I mean, there's so many other approaches that are effective, that are proven scientifically, that we are working with. We're working with cutting-edge things that don't require a prescription necessarily, but it really honors and focuses in on each individual. How can we help improve the quality of their life?
Well, and Tasha, can you speak to all the movement that we have?
So yeah, so we are actually up to daily movement at the residence. We have an exercise class, so we have 3 yoga classes happening a week.
Wow.
We have 2 classes that are geared towards balance, just for stability, because as we age, of course, our balance is something
Worry about
that
falls, and you want
absolutely, and we want to do everything we can to prevent falls. And we have 2 additional strength training classes. And then we also have we have a new drumming class that we just incorporated where we're using drumsticks to build strength and range of motion. So we're having movements happening almost every day. We're having some form of exercise in addition to the walking program that's pretty active in the community as well. And
started in Bristol with a bunch of millennials who were traveling with their yurt and needed a place for the winter, and they started drumming in the backyard. We invited them in because the residents say, "What's all that noise?" We ended up with our own drumming circle. The VA found out about it and wanted to research this. We actually ended up going up to Governor Douglas and making him a drum, and he chanted with the residents when they were drumming at the State House. We won the Innovative Program of the Year
That's
award
great.
for the state of Vermont. So I thought that was pretty neat. But yeah, music and movement, those are all critical.
And we now, our weekend engagement person is a music therapist. So
Perfect.
Susan's with us all weekend, and she's doing all kinds of rhythm and music. One of the last things we lose with dementia is our rhythm that remains. So we really try to tap into that.
You mentioned a magic word there, because most of us have heard about dementia and Alzheimer's, and there's a lot of fear around that. I believe that we were the first in the state, or if not, but you're certified in this particular approach, which we love to use. We call it changing brain. Again, life is change.
Right.
Our brains, all of our brains, are changing every day. Would you say just a little bit about that dementia program and our approach at Living Well?
Sure. So in addition to running the programs at Ethan Allen Residence, I do all of the dementia care education for all 3 campuses.
All 3 of the campuses.
And we follow Teepa Snow's philosophy, which she is an occupational therapist. That's her background. And she really has done everything to look at the individual, know them well, know their background, and focus on what they can do. And not focus on what they can no longer do, because why would we do that? That makes no sense at all. That makes no sense at all.
Exactly.
And
present,
the focus
be in the
is
present.
exactly. So we focus on what the resident is able to do, and in doing that, we're honoring the exact space that they're in. And because we're small, we can really get to know our residents.
That's
and the more we know
fantastic.
about their history, the more we can reach them.
And this is important because part of how we're evolving our business is there's 105 residential care homes in Vermont. And we have developed a food system. I want to talk about food to care. We don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to touch on the food and also the community, the resettlement and some of the folks, how we're outreaching into that community. But that's so important, the food. Food is medicine.
Yeah, like you had mentioned, Paul, food is medicine, and we have fantastic food at Ethan Allen. We cook with about 30%, I believe, local food. We use as much organic as possible. Everything is homemade.
We're part of the Fresh Network now, right, Mary?
Part of the Fresh Network, yep.
Everything is homemade down to the salad dressings. We welcome family to join residents for meals. The staff is served a meal, lunch every day. And it's great.
Yeah, we eat together as a community, which is unusual.
Yes, we do.
You know, there's not a lot of separation there. I've walked in there and seen, you know, staff sitting and reading a story with people. They're not just delivering pharmaceuticals. We're sitting and having lunch together. Family members will drop in. It's like a big home, country home.
Absolutely. And actually, to your point, you were saying that the staff would be reading a book. So it's been a challenge, actually, to get our staff to realize that we don't operate like a machine. We want our staff and our caregivers to sit and read, to get to know the residents, to take them for a walk. They're not used to that. Often, a lot of our employees have to have 2 jobs, and in the other places that they work, they run just very tight schedules. We don't do that. We don't encourage that. We want people to spend time and get to know the residents.
And we address that at orientation. So on day one, it is addressed.
We have to continue to remind our staff that this is who we are.
And part of that, how we help develop and train that too, is our system of governance, how we manage. Everyone has a voice in our organization that can't be ignored. Decisions are made by consent. That's different than consensus. You don't have to agree. But all of us bring up your objections to a decision, because what are we doing? We're managing change. We make the best decision, so the staff, everyone in the organization, we actually have a staff person that's elected to the board of directors. Information flows in both directions. We have family circles, resident circles. We have people from the community. It's a living system. That's why it can work. Okay, we've only got a couple minutes left.
There is one thing that I do want to bring up that I think is really important, that differentiates us from about 90% of the places in Burlington. Is one of our missions was to create more Medicaid beds in Burlington, because there's a desperate need for them.
Yes.
A number of the other homes, as long as you have private assets and private money, you can stay. Once that money is gone, you're asked to leave. We are not that way. Our goal is to keep people through end of life. We do a great job with end of life care. Someone can transition from private assets to Medicaid and not be asked to leave.
That's huge.
Which is
Thank
huge.
you. That's huge, huge.
Yes.
Final little thoughts. Mary, why don't you start, and then Tasha, and then I'll go.
Well, I welcome the community to come in and see what we have. We have this little gem in the new north end of Burlington that we would like to share with everyone.
Thank you. Tasha?
And I would like to welcome volunteers, as many people.
And donors?
And donors, of course. Donations always welcome.
Right,
we are a nonprofit. But I would love to see more musicians, and we are such a rich community.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking at these beautiful flowers my wife put in a vase. Look at this weed, okay? If that was just sitting by itself, okay?
Nothing.
Nothing. You put these flowers, some are losing petals, but when you put them in a community, look how beautiful. Everything shines. We are a flowering community at Living Well Group. And one of the quotes that we use quite often is, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes no less as a community to uphold our elders. We invite all of you in our Burlington community. We're thankful to you. We're grateful to you. Please join us in helping bring aging to a different place. Thank you.